And joining us now is Amber Athey, Washington editor at The Spectator. Amber, welcome back. Always great to see you. As we heard Eric report, Senate Republicans are feeling pretty confident that they can take the majority in the midterms. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. What do you think?
Republicans doing really well. And what's interesting is that not only are Republicans doing well on these individual race matchups, but they're also doing well as a party. When you look at the polling of people who prefer voting straight Republican versus straight Democrat, Republicans have had actually some of the best support that they've seen in years on that polling as well. So Democrats are even releasing, statements that suggest that they need to pull back on very unpopular ticket items like COVID restrictions and some of their other less popular policies on climate change, because they're worried that they are going to get absolutely trounced in the midterms.
Yeah. And also, as you know, President Biden just returned from his trip to Poland, and he spoke this afternoon unveiling his 2023 budget proposal, that is. Among other things, it includes a new minimum tax targeting billionaires. However, President Biden stressed that people making less than $400,000 a year would not see a tax hike. I want to get your take on that. Do you think that's realistic?
That's really hard to believe, considering he made this promise during the campaign, and all of the independent tax think tanks in the D.C. area did analysis of Biden's plan and found that it would be impossible for him to implement some of these tax hikes without them going onto middle-class Americans as well. And of course, the other problem is that even when you do raise taxes only on people who are wealthy or billionaires, those things do tend to trickle down into everyday Americans' wallets, whether through hikes on the price of consumer goods or just generally inflation. So it's not as clear-cut as Biden makes it sound. I'm not opposed to increasing taxes on wealthy people out of mere principle, but the problem is when it goes into practice, it usually does end up affecting average Americans as well.
After his address, the president did something he doesn't do that often. He took some questions from the press, and a number of the reporters, they actually pressed him on comments he made while he was in Poland regarding Vladimir Putin, seeming to suggest regime change, which President Biden denied, saying that he was simply expressing his moral outrage. That said, how do you think those comments that he made about Vladimir Putin and the subsequent walk back, how do you think that looks on the global stage?
It's incredibly dangerous, because if Biden meant what he was saying, that would be in direct contradiction of his promise not to send troops into the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And if he said it as a gaffe, then that tells us that his mental state is not at a level where he should be dictating foreign policy. So both of those possible explanations for why he said that are really quite troubling and make us feel quite unsafe here at home. And the fact that the White House communications staff felt the need to immediately release statements claiming that he wasn't calling for regime change, I think tells us that this was made as a mistake, in error. And again, that is a really scary thought, to think that we have our commander-in-chief overseas saying things that he doesn't mean. That's horrible for foreign policy, and it ramps up tensions and certainly provokes bad actors like Russia to try to test the limits.
Yeah, and there is definitely a lot of concerns, a lot of things that President Biden said that's concerning a lot of people. And I know there's a new Associated Press poll showing that actually 71% of Americans are pretty concerned. They think the Russians' invasion of Ukraine has increased actually the possibility of nuclear weapons being used. I want to talk to you more about that. I mean, do you think that's a valid concern? Should people be worried about that?
I think that's always a concern when you're talking about aggression coming from states that have nuclear weapons. I don't know how realistic that is, but I understand why people are thinking about it as this conflict continues to escalate, and as the United States and Joe Biden specifically don't seem to be doing a whole lot to try to reduce tensions there. So that's really concerning. And I think it's interesting that for all of the media posturing about nuclear war when President Trump was in office with North Korea, Americans didn't have that same concern, at least not at the level that you're seeing it now. So to some extent, Trump's rhetoric, as it has been compared to Biden's in terms of being off the cuff or loose, was used in a deterrent manner, whereas Biden seems to be only escalating.
Well, Amber, so much more we can talk about. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but thank you so much for all of your analysis. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.